Today's episode is brought to you by Taft Law and its Franchise Advance Program, a one-of-a-kind program developed by your host, Josh Brown, to help entrepreneurs assess, convert, and grow your business the right way through sound franchise structures. To learn more, go to taftlaw.com and type Franchise Advance Program in the search bar.
If you think like, act like, or are trying to grow like a franchise, then the Franchise Euphoria podcast is for you. Hello and welcome everybody. Josh Brown here, and I created this podcast for one main goal: to help people who are trying to grow their business through franchising or franchise-like structures to do it the right way. I've been practicing law now as a franchise lawyer for many, many years, and I've seen it done the right way and the wrong way. And this podcast is not filled with a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Rather, I talk with real people, people who have been there, have done it, are doing it right now. And I also dive deep into specific topics related to franchising. So if this is of interest to you, you are at the right place. Enjoy. On today's episode of Franchise Euphoria, I'm thrilled to have on husband and wife duo Don and Evonne Varady, who are the co-founders of Clean Eatz, that launched in 2011 and started franchising in 2015. They now have, I believe, 89 locations open or in process and growing quite nicely. They are focused on clean, balanced food, thought-provoking education, and motivational support that helps franchisees inspire results with their customers, and all part of a personal wellness type brand. Hello, Don and Evonne. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
So I love having, I've been doing this for long enough that I've had the opportunity to interview husband and wife duos, which of course, is awesome that, you're in business and in life together. So we'll talk about that as we go along through the show. But talk about at the outset here how you guys decided or came up with this concept all the way back in 2011.
So a little bit of background on us. I was previously an X-ray tech, and Don was a union carpenter. And I was doing X-ray, and I always had a passion for fitness. And so instead of going to 5 years of physical therapy school at that point, I decided to become a personal trainer. And I was training a group of women doing kickboxing. I don't know, like us who are dated, probably Billy Banks back then and Tybo. So kind of like, way before the burn boot camps and all that and the stuff. So I was teaching a group of women, and they were coming in there, and they were, just busting their butts and doing the fitness and, consistently, but they never could get to their goals. So I asked them one day after class, I'm like, why can you ladies not get to, your fitness goals? And they're like, we were from a very small town, and there was a McDonald's on one corner and a Hardee's on the other corner. And they were just
there's your answer, right? That's the answer.
Yeah. So they were working out and then going to, one of those locations. And so I'm like, okay. At the time, I was kind of dabbling in body, the figure competitions in bodybuilding. And I was doing those tuna packets and brown rice and broccoli and that kind of stuff. So nothing exciting. And I was like, okay, what if I meal prep for you ladies? And this was back in 2006 when we were doing this. So they're like, yeah. So I made their meals, and 6 weeks later, they had started seeing amazing results. So not too long after that, word got around that I'm a redhead. So this redhead fitness girl was making meals, training, and all this. So before you knew it, I was doing about 500 Tupperware containers out of my kitchen on a Sunday.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So that's not legal. Whoever's listening, you cannot do it out of your home base. The health department will crack down on you. But yeah. So, and then fast forward, probably about 15, 18 months later, I was diagnosed with melanoma, and it was pretty much they gave me a, like, hey, you might, they thought I had went into lymphoma. So I was heading into surgery to get lymph nodes taken out. And when I woke up from the surgery, the doctor told me, he's like, you got a second chance to life. And he's like, I would go live it. Everything came back benign. And I was like, okay. So I went into my x-ray job and I quit. I found this like little cafe in Bethalto, Illinois, and it was right across from a gym. And I opened up this cafe called Locale. So that was 3 years prior to us opening Clean Eatz. So probably about 36 months later, after we opened Locale Cafe, I had another scare of melanoma. And so my mom's like, this is always the universe telling you to make a life change. And I was like, you're right. So we picked up and we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina and started Clean Eatz. So
that's an amazing story. I mean, two bouts with that, and thank God that, you're okay, but there's nothing like that to give you a swift kick in the butt to basically go do what you want to do. Absolutely.
And then so we opened Clean Eatz here in 2013 in Wilmington, North Carolina. And then we ended up franchising in 2015. So 2 years after we had opened, we had an angel investor who was in the town here, and they had like this little group, and he's like, I think that you guys have a franchise here. And he introduced us to an individual who was actually heading into franchise law himself and decided to skip that out and come on board and franchise us. So we just celebrated our 10-year back in January.
Now, did you go to Wilmington, North Carolina, because that was the home of Michael Jordan when he grew up? Or what was the basis for going to Wilmington?
It actually was a recommendation from Miss Olympia, Jen Hendershot. She had just won the Olympia, and we were at the Arnold show in Ohio. And we had on our shirts, and she's like, what's this? And I was like, oh, this is, healthy eating concept. And I was like, we're heading to Florida. And she's like, I think you should go to Wilmington, North Carolina. And we're like, where is that at? And we got on Craigslist one afternoon and found the location that we're currently in on Racing Drive was on Craigslist for sale. And we put that into the GPS, drove 18 hours down here and bought it on site, or just like took over. I mean, we told him that if he would save it until Thanksgiving in November, we would take it. So no negotiations, no nothing. We just took it on a whim. So worked out.
Well, Don, so here you are, you're a union carpenter and Evonne's x-ray tech. So it makes perfect sense that you guys are launching a Clean Eatz, food concept. Tell me what's your role in all of this?
The brains behind the operation.
No.
Somehow I'm not buying that.
So, man, a really quick background story. When I met Evonne, my life was kind of what's a good word for it? I was just kind of in a dark place. I'd gone through a divorce a couple years prior and was drinking a lot and partying a lot and not making what I would call the best of decisions. And, when we have a discovery day, I'm pretty transparent about my lifestyle back then. And I always tell everybody that, and it's not for show. I really truly mean it, that had I not met her when I did, I'd be dead or in prison. The decisions that I were making were going to lead me down that path to one of those 2 points. And so, I had kind of gotten to a point where I was going to be okay being alone when I had met her. So it was kind of like a fate or kind of a breath of fresh air type thing for me. I always tell everybody I had finally met a woman with her shit together. Excuse my language. But, when I met her and she had that restaurant, I knew that my career was going on the outs. That was at the end of 2009, toward the end of the housing market, just really taking a dive. And I was really burnt out being a carpenter. At that point, I think I had been in 13 years or something like that. So, my career was really getting to me, and I was looking for something. And my dream had always been to open a sports bar. That's kind of what my envision was. And I'm just a big sports guy, big memorabilia guy. And that was kind of a big thing back then in St. Louis, was the little mom and pop sports bars with all the unique, sports memorabilia hanging on the walls and people hanging out there to watch Cardinal games and Blues games. And that was kind of what I always had dreamed of having or owning one day. And I had started competing. I had already done one bodybuilding show when I met Evonne. So when I met her and found out what she was doing and saw the cafe, and I was already doing a meal prep thing for myself, to compete in shows. I was writing diets for training clients on the side, but I wasn't like cooking them and putting them in Tupperware containers like she was. That's a little too far for me. But
everybody has their limitations.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just jived. And then as time went on, I think 4 or 5 months into our relationship, we had just pretty much decided I wasn't going to go back to work. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I think I had $4 or $5 grand in my name at the time after liquidating everything for a divorce. And I said, if we're going to do this, the only way that I can do it with a clean conscience and, financially anyway, is I have to file a bankruptcy and basically start over. And so that's what I did. I had a brand new Hemi truck at the time. I had a 2-bedroom house to myself. And I basically just gave everything up. I took the truck back to the bank, let the bank foreclose on my house, and filed a personal bankruptcy. And we kind of took it from there. And then we went back to my house, packed as much of my stuff as we could, and went to the restaurant and never looked back. And then they foreclosed on my house, and we lived in the restaurant for a year after that.
Yeah, most people, we always forget to tell that story, but we lived in our cafe.
Like you literally lived in the cafe?
Yeah, so after I let the bank have my house, Evonne had a futon, like a little place that she was sleeping in when I met her. And then the landlord there loved us, and we got along with him so well that there was a bridal store, a bridal shop that used to be next door, and it had went out of business. And they had like a little efficiency closet thing in the back, like a break area that had like a sink and a countertop and, something like that. And there was just enough room in this little hole for us to put a futon bed in there. And so that's where we lived for a year. We would.
It was like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
for 2 years.
Yeah.
We would travel back and forth to Hillsboro on the weekends that, we had the girls, her 2 girls, and we would stay between her mom's house and this little closet that we slept in. For almost 2 years until we could afford a 425 square foot studio apartment.
Don't you miss the good old days?
Those were the best times of our life.
Best.
They were awesome. I would go back there tomorrow.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. That's really amazing, by the way. First of all, it shows a lot of dedication on your part. Bankruptcy is always challenging, no matter which way you slice it. But I got to think it on some level, when you made that decision and put it in its place, that was a huge weight off your shoulders, even though it was a very tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a hurt to my ego and my pride, but at the time, and then after I did it is when it was kind of a breath of fresh air. It was like, okay, I have a clean start now. Don't screw it up. You know what I mean? Because I was always really responsible with my money. Unfortunately, the girl that I was married to was not, and I had to pay for that. So, but I learned a lot of hard lessons from it. And so it was kind of, when that happened, I'm like, okay, I have a fresh start at life. Let's do this the right way. So
it's crazy. What you would respect is that it's still on our FDD. So we tell the story just so, we're upfront and honest to potential franchisees. Be like, okay, if you read the FDD, then there's a bankruptcy, and he tells the story, how he got that. So.
Well, and it's a powerful story on the other side, too, of just how you guys were able to build, essentially from scratch in a new community, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like either one of you had many contacts or connections there. Talk about that from the business side of things. Obviously, you had Evonne some experience with the other business doing what you were doing, and you kind of took that to Clean Eatz. But what was that like in those early days as you were building up that business in a new town, in a new location, an area that wasn't home to you at that point?
Man, Wilmington was very open arms with us. So we moved here in November, and we did not open the cafe until late January. And so again, we were broke. Social media was not a huge thing 10 years ago, so how do you get your, the word out about a new restaurant open? We trained in the gym 7 days a week. If Don wasn't there, I was. If I was there, Don wasn't, so we sat in, we had Gold's Gym right across the street, which was one of the things that we loved about this location, was that there was like-minded people they just had to walk over, So, I think we advertised a little bit too much in those, 3 months, because our first day opening back in Illinois, we were barely scraping pennies by, with the business, because Midwest people just weren't eating healthy like that. We were getting a business, but it was just so
come on. Yeah, it's the Midwest. They want to go work out for 10 minutes and then go grab their Happy Meal, or their McDonald's,
Exactly. So when we came here, we didn't hire any employees. So imagine that. We're opening up a new restaurant, and me and Don think that we can just run this business, the two of us. Well, we had a line out the door day one, and me and him, we just put our head down. I cooked. He took orders. When he didn't have someone taking orders, he helped me cook and run food. And we got through. We closed at 7:00 that day, and I think that was the hardest I had ever worked in my entire life.
But you're like, we're on to something here, right? Yeah. We're on to something.
We sat down on our kitchen floor that night, and I was like, I don't care who you hire, but someone's got to walk in tomorrow at 11 a.m. because we can't do this again today. So it was a breath of fresh air. Like, the community just embraced us. And, we had to prove ourselves here. We were both bodybuilder, or, I say bodybuilders, but figure competition, and he was a bodybuilder. And we're from the Midwest. And so, just exactly what you just said, they're like, oh, you haven't stood on a North Carolina show. North Carolina is we are the capital of bodybuilding, so we don't recognize you unless you've won something here. So we're like, all right. So Don started competing for the show. When did you compete that year? September, maybe?
Yeah, later in the year.
Yeah, September that year. And then I competed in June, and we both won the show. So they loved us after that point. So
that is incredible. So, you guys, so at this point, you're not married yet at this point, are you?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which wasn't great in the South.
Well, yeah. So you're, and the only reason I asked is just to try to, from a time frame perspective. So, obviously you're continuing to get to know each other. And obviously you're in a desperate situation. And now you kick this thing off, and you're having a great immediate result. Now, it's the two of you. I imagine you each bring a certain skill set to the table and complement each other in certain ways. At what point did you guys have to talk about that or figure that out to say, okay, listen, if we're going to continue to do this, obviously we have to hire more people. But between the two of us, Evonne and Don, you guys have to kind of have your roles in this company so you're not stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. We actually established that from day one. So the minute back in Illinois, before we even moved to North Carolina and started Clean Eatz, when it was still Local Cafe, we established those lanes very quickly. I was not a chef by any means. I knew nothing about food. I could cook, but let's call it what it is. I was not going to be a gourmet wizard and like a menu developer, and that just happens to be her strong suit, and it's not mine. So we still operate like that today. If it has anything to do in our business with food, it goes to her. Any operation, legal, finance issues all come to me. And we've kept it that way from day one, and everybody in the office knows it.
Well, and at what point do you go from that first location to another location? Or I guess maybe even a question before that would be, at what point do you think, hey, we need to open multiple locations?
I think we didn't even think about that until 2 years in, and we had started selling a little more supplements in the cafe, which was weird for us. We had never really done a whole lot of that, and we had decided that we wanted to expand on what we were doing. So like Evonne always explains it to people, that we wanted to kind of create like a grand central station for like bodybuilders and fitness people. So we wanted to have like a clothing area and like a supplement area and like all of this stuff in like a one-stop shop. So we had went to a guy here in town to have like our dream location drawn out. We were like, okay, we have the money. We had worked hard over the last 2 years and saved up enough money that we could afford another rent, and we could afford to do it right and build a space out that we wanted to. And luckily, he kind of talked us out of doing that and talked us into going the franchise route, which is a whole other story. But we decided to franchise instead. But I think that's how we came to that decision, was we wanted to build out our dream space after doing it for 2 years. We just wanted a bigger space.
Now, at this point, were you still living in the first place, or had you moved out of there yet?
When we moved to North Carolina, we got an apartment because our current cafe, the original, is only 1,100 square feet. So not much room to live in there.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think talk about Don and Evonne, both of you. You alluded to it a little bit. It's a common theme in with franchise businesses that very often it's not the founders who think about franchising. And, you think that it would be, and sometimes it is, but oftentimes, it's the customers who come in and say, hey, have you ever thought of franchising, or have you ever thought of opening another location? It sounds like here it was somebody who kind of talked you into that concept a little bit.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, we had some customers, some older business guys that were part of an entrepreneur school here in town, who had came in and they would come in. I don't remember what nights, but it was routine. They kept coming in on the same nights, and they would always pull me and Evonne aside and ask us where we saw ourselves in 5 years. And I mean, at the time, we were so into competing, we didn't really care where we saw ourselves in 5 years, as long as we were paying our bills and eating food and competing in shows. That's really all we cared about. And, it was around the same time that we had went to the equipment guy here in town to draw out that second location. And we had never really thought about franchising until he mentioned it, and then kind of went down that wormhole and explored it. And then, ultimately landed on that's the route we wanted to go. So.
What was that like, Evonne, going from going to your second location at that point? What was that like for you guys?
Oh, shoot. Yeah. So everyone thinks that franchising is going to be easy and you're going to make all this money. And, it's a lot more difficult than what people imagine. And why I say that, and it has nothing to do with work, but it's like taking everything out of your head and putting it on paper. We always call it like the peanut butter and jelly theory around here, because no matter how you put it on paper, someone reads it the wrong way, or they interpret it a different way, or it's just, yeah. And as you can tell, we always joke, and I'm like the rainbows and unicorns. So, and Don's like always like the black and white, it's either this or that. And, so for me to write down what was in my head was the most painful thing I think I could have ever done. And like, how do you open the store? Like, how do you make chicken broccoli rice? And in the early days, when we did decide to franchise, the guy, he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, this is going to take a while. Like, you probably won't sell your first franchise until, like 6 months down the road. And like you just said previously, we sold 6 in the first 60 days. Because it was all of our customers who had been coming in for those 2 years that wanted to expand, which they were kind of meatheads too, and they wanted to expand it, so we had to like get our operations and stuff fast, up to speed. And back in the day, if you talk to those first 6, I was texting the recipes out on my phone on a notebook paper. So I would sit in the car, and I know you're right. Like,
again, not recommended, right? Yeah.
No.
That was miserable.
It was miserable. And then I don't know what changed. Our Jason, who was helping us at the time, he was part of this franchise group, and he sat in there one day and just followed me. Anything that I did, he just wrote down on like shorthand it. And finally, we got systems and procedures in check, the best that we could at that point, But it was really difficult. And I don't think I realized, and I actually just figured this out in 2020. So like 2 years ago, 2.5, that franchising is really about investing in people. Like, again, like in our concept, you can make chicken, broccoli, and rice, but you're basically here to support, and, like you have to invest in your franchise partners or it doesn't work. So if you make a mistake and you don't have a good relationship with them, man, they can chew you up and spit you out, But
yeah, it's 100%.
If you do have a good relationship with them, then like you can kind of screw up a little bit, and own it, and they forgive you quickly because they trust you.
Well, and when you said you sold 6 in 6 months, what that tells me instinctively is you guys had a good community building around what you were doing, because customers do come in to a lot of businesses and say, yeah, I'd love to do this. But then when push comes to shove, maybe they do, maybe they don't. They just like the concept. But to have people actually follow through with it that quickly, which is fast, guys. I mean, that's fast. I mean, that's amazing. And I think right now, it's 2020, you got 89. I mean, you guys have grown fast. But that tells me that you really were doing a great job in building out the community around what you were doing. And I know that plays an important role in everything that you do. I mean, I know you guys don't think of yourself as just a cafe or just a restaurant. You think of yourself as a community, and you think of yourself as trying to help people change their lives, because part of what you're doing right now helped you guys change your own lives, it seems like. And so that's an amazing synergy there. And I'd love to hear you guys each kind of talk about how the community has been such a big part of everything that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of people preach culture, but culture is earned, and with our customers, like they trusted us to come in and cook for them. And, their journeys of weight loss or their competitions that they were doing or their health, as we franchised too, it like the meatheads turned into elderly people who turned into moms, who turned into entrepreneurs who couldn't, cook for themselves at night because they were busy starting their own companies. So for them to come in and trust you with all of that was a huge, compliment on us. And then, like you said, like the 6 people who bought and we had nothing, and they trusted us for them to invest their money in there and, believe in what we were trying to do, and then succeed in it with those, because most of those guys are still with us today. And I mean, it's just the vendors. Like I can remember talking to the vendors that we were using. I'm like, hey, we're franchising. And they're like, yeah. They're like, everyone says they're going to do this, and so we had to earn their respect, be like, hey, I know that we only have 1 store in Florida, but I promise you we're going to get more, and we're going to build this relationship, and just trust us on this. And integrity is really big, I think, in franchising too. Like, I always use the phrase that it's principle over convenience, because you can always choose the convenient, solution in front of you, but it's the principle of everything. And that's hard to do once you keep getting bigger and bigger.
Well, at the end of the day, too, I think franchisees in particular want to feel like they're part of something. And I think that, one of the most important things about a franchisor or franchisee relationship is that there's very clear value at the outset, because you're showing them hey, this is how you do it. This is sort of the roadmap. These are the, the procedures. This is the way that you run this business. Here's, a POS system. Here's how we operate this, that, and the other. You're showing them sort of the ropes. But at a certain point in time, franchisees know how to run the business. And so the secret sauce, one of the secret sauces to make it work is that you, as a franchisor, I believe, have to have an ongoing clear value proposition to those franchisees a year after they sign up, 2 years. What is it that you're still bringing to the table? And a big component of that, Evonne, as you state, is when you develop a relationship with them and you guys are doing this together, you're both swimming, the same way, you're both paddling the same way, and you're helping them along the way. That really does a great service to show, the continued value of the franchisor in the process.
Definitely. And I'll let Don speak on his side too, because we kind of handle our relationships a little bit different with each owner. So
yeah, talk about that, Don.
Well, I mean, I can start off by alluding a little bit more about what she said into integrity. That is one of our core values, and I think it's the one that means the most to me for certain reasons. But, I always say that integrity is everything, and without it, you have nothing. But it means so much. We actually started a consulting company and named it Integrity Brands, but I can tell you more about that later. But, it starts with the customers, and that's what I always tell the franchisees. If you don't get to know them, who they are, and know them personally, what their kids' names are, where they go to school. I mean, I know that stuff sounds kind of cliche, but it's the truth. And that's what we did. And that's how we grew this brand in the beginning. We didn't have all the technology. We didn't have Facebook, Instagram. We barely had a website. We had a really janky website, to be honest with you. So, I mean, we had to bootstrap it. We had to get to know these guys personally. And, we knew what they ate when they pulled in the parking lot. And, just forming those relationships over the years is what led us to where we are now. And then, with the franchisees, when we started franchising, I had a lot of construction experience. So I had experience managing a lot of guys at one time who weren't all the same. And so, I wasn't the best at it at times because I was really young then. But one thing I learned is you can't, everybody has different love languages, so to speak, right? You can't talk to the same guy and get the same result that you can another guy or this guy over here or this person over here. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've taught myself through the years of us being a franchise is forming an individual relationship with each franchisee and trying to learn how to talk to them, if that makes sense, and how to solve their problems and listen to them vent to me and things like that, and how to talk back to them to make them feel good. And that's not easy to do. I still struggle with it now. There are still times where I just don't want to get on that, dread getting on the phone with somebody because I already know what they're going to call me about, but it's my job and it's what I got to do. But, I'm getting a lot better at it and I feel pretty good about it. And probably one of the biggest things that makes me feel good is when a franchisee will call her or I or send us a picture of, a goal they met. They earned a sports car that they've always wanted, or they bought their dream home or whatever. That kind of stuff right there, I think, is what's keeping us in the game, to be honest with you.
Well, it's like children, right? I mean, I've got 3 daughters myself, and I am consistently learning every day that, you can't talk to all 3 of them the same way. So you've got to, right? You've got to adapt that conversation. So you guys have 89 locations in the works right now. How many are open?
Probably by the time you air this, we'll have 90 units open and running.
Yeah.
90 units open and running. That's amazing.
How many is we have 92 in the pipeline to open.
And now that you guys have grown and, you've emerged, I mean, that's a sizable amount. You're doing great with that. Talk about as you go into the future, and you grow further, who's an ideal type of franchisee, that you're like, has it changed at all? Or is it still the same as from when, day one, when you guys first started this journey?
It's changed a little bit, but all in all, it's always been the same type of person. As our brand and model has expanded and matured and gotten a lot tighter and a lot better, we've attracted a little bit more of a mature franchisee. I would think, somebody with a little bit more financial clout, if you will. But the best ones to us, who have always been the most successful, are the ones who barely qualify financially with our financial qualifications, who have to make it work. They cannot have a plan B, because if they fail, they die. And those guys, just for whatever reason, have always turned out to be our best operators, our best franchisees, and they are just killers. They crush it every day.
They're hungry.
But they're hungry and they're paying attention, right? They're there.
Yeah.
They've got a lot riding on it.
I mean, if you look at, I can't remember them all right off the top of my head, but I want to say our top 6 or 7 operators in our system, they all had blue collar jobs before they started doing this. None of them had food experience, not a one.
What's the best place for somebody who's interested to learn more about Clean Eatz to get a hold of you guys, or to learn more about the brand?
Probably our website, cleaneatz.com, CLEATZ.com.
And perfect. So, and that's it's cleaneatz.com, but Eatz is EATZ.com, not S. So Clean Eatz with a Z. .com. As we finish up here, and thank you guys so much for being so generous with your time and sharing everything so candidly. It's an amazing story. What is something that you would, each one of you, I'd love each one of you to answer this. There's lots of people who are listening who are in the thralls right now of maybe deciding whether they want to franchise, maybe at the early stages of franchising, just trying to figure all this out. And I don't want to dumb this thing down to, hey, what's the one thing you want to tell them? Because there's a million things you probably want to tell them. But as you look back over these several years, from when you started franchising in 2015 to now we're in 2023, as you look, what is something that you think is very important for these folks to keep in mind as they try to grow their businesses through a franchise model?
He's looking at me to say first. My best advice, I feel like, what I've learned over the years, is to check your ego at the door. I feel like everyone who comes out of the gate, they start, look at me, this is what I've done. And you really need, if you're the person in the room that's talking the most, then you need to walk out and go get into a smarter room. We surrounded our people with people who were so much more intelligent, more experienced. And we always sat in the room and just listened. I mean, once in a while you would ask, say a question, but we never went into that room and even when you say, oh, we have this many, we have that many, because, it's just, if you are just quiet and you listen and check your ego and you can accept criticism and you work hard with it and you take those things and apply them, man, it's that. I feel like that's the recipe for success, because franchising is hard. But like Don said, it's when you have that franchisee who has succeeded, it's all well worth it. But just listen to everything. Listen to your franchisees, listen to your customers, listen to the people, your mentors, to the podcasts like these. Like I would listen to all of yours, and just, figure out what's best for their business model.
Don?
I've answered this question many times over the last few years, and I have 3 key things that I tell everybody. Number 1 is always do the right thing. Yeah. If you always do the right thing, you're never going to go wrong. Number 2 is similar to what Evonne had just said, always be humble. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You're never going to learn anything, and that's a big one for me. And then the last one is never bend on your integrity. Always trust your gut. If somebody is trying to coerce you into a decision or sell you something that doesn't feel right, there's a 99% chance that it's not right. And the reason that one is so important is because that has almost happened to her and I could a dozen times over the last 10 years, where we were sold on a consultant or sold on a program or sold on this or that, the other thing. And had we not trusted our gut and followed through with it, there was a couple times we almost lost our entire company. So I would just stand your ground on your integrity and trust your gut, because it's always right.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing. I've been doing this podcast for 10 years, and I always, one of the things I love, about it is meeting people like yourselves who've got such a inspiring story to share, as it really helps a lot of other people through their journey. And I can't wait myself, being located in Indiana. I'm going to go check out one of your locations, probably the one in Fishers, because it's closer to me. So I'm excited to go check it out and to continue to follow what you guys do as you guys continue to grow and have the impact that you're having, though. So thank you so much for sharing, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. And just to give you a plug, make sure you have a good franchise attorney, because they save you too.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps to get this show out to more and more people. Also, if you have any questions, have ideas for guests or topics, please email me, josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. That's josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. And finally, please note that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes and is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be any kind of legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, please contact a lawyer. Have a great one. Happy franchising.